Guys, thank you. Welcome to the Startup Tank. If this is your first time, I'm your host, Matt Ward, syndicate lead and founder of Forward VC. Our climate syndicate invests in early stage, so pre-seed and seed stage climate companies like the ones you'll see today that are moving the world forward. To learn more about us and what we do, please visit forward.vc for more details and to apply. And of course, because there's always a mistake with this and things are duct taped together, now we'll start the recording. So again, welcome to the Startup Tank. I'm your host, Matt Ward. If this is your first time here, get ready. We've got an awesome slate of companies planned for you. 7 climate companies who are working on saving the world and scaling and building awesome businesses in the process. We'll have 3 incredible investors joining us on the panel. Today, we've got Moritz Jungmann from Future Energy Ventures, Laura Dyer from Buoyant Ventures, and Daniel Reese from Uvc Partners. We'll have to see if Daniel gets here. As founders and investors, everything we all know, we're incredibly busy with meetings and everything going on. So we have a little bit of a leeway, of course, with everything. So the startuptank.com, we've been working on this for a while now of trying to build up a Shark Tank, a place for climate companies to get more exposure, to get more funding. Because the biggest challenge right now in the climate scene, as I see it from an investor side of things, is funding. There's a major crunch in the early stages. Later stages, there's plenty of money coming in with LPs, with corporates, with governments, with carbon credits. But in the early stages, with founders like these that really need the help to grow and scale and reach that later stage to be able to build the next unicorn and larger companies, they need early stage funding. And that's what we've got our investors here. That's what the Startup Tank is all about. Before I hand it over to our investors, I just want to let you all know the Startup Tank is brought to you by, in addition to Forward VC's Climate Syndicate, Leva, your all-purpose digital SPV. Takes 5 minutes to set up. You can do it without lawyers, without headaches, set up secondaries, follow on, and raise money for your company or to deploy in companies like we do at the Syndicate. And it's super easy, super fast. Forward.vc/Leva, that's LEVA, for more details and to set up your, I believe the first SPV is free, and if not, it's the second one. It's an incredible deal as long as you tell them that Matt sent you. And that's Forward, so the number 4, ward.vc/Leva, LEVA. But now I want to hand things over to our investor panel, because those are the ones that you guys are here to see, of course. First, we've got Mr. Daniel Reese with Uvc Partners, Moritz Jungmann with Future Energy Ventures, and Laura Dyer of Buoyant Ventures. I want to give each of you a little bit of time to share what you are, what you do, and who you're with. So Laura, I'd love to give it to you first. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Buoyant, and what you guys are looking for.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for hosting and having me here. So my name is Laura. I'm a senior associate with Buoyant Ventures. Buoyant invests in digital solutions to climate risk. So we invest across agriculture and water, the built environment, energy, and mobility. And we say there is a horizontal that goes across those verticals, which is climate risk intelligence. So that really includes climate analytics and emissions management. We invest in seed and Series A, and we're based in Chicago, Illinois, here in the US. And we are women-founded and women-led.
Very cool, and very excited to have you on. The diversity is always a problem in tech, especially in deep tech. And this is, we've got some deep tech here. We're glad to have you on. Moritz, do you want to take over next and tell us a little bit more about FEV and what you guys do?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Moritz. I'm with Future Energy Ventures. We are the CVC fund of E.ON, one of the biggest European utilities here in Europe. We've been doing this over the last 7 years. We have an office in Palo Alto, in Tel Aviv, and here in Essen. We invest in the energy transition, have been doing this since then, and are looking forward now into more even impact-driven startups. And we focus on Series A and plus, but of course are very interested in what kind of seed companies are climbing the ladder.
And then that just leaves Daniel with Uvc Partners. Daniel, take it away.
Hey guys, super nice to meet you. Matt, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it. I'm with Uvc Partners. We are based in Munich and in Berlin, focused on seed and Series A companies. We love deep tech, also in the climate space, very technical solutions. We also do hardware. So that's maybe also something to mention. And yeah, our tickets start at 500K, and I'm super curious to learn more about the startups presenting, and great to meet all of you. Thank you so much.
And thanks to all of you guys for attending, and everyone who's here on the live pitch session. If it's your first time here, be sure to subscribe. You can subscribe at thestartuptank.com/YouTube. That'll subscribe you on YouTube, or you can find us as well on your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, including Spotify. And just for a little bit more about me, again, I'm your host, Matt Ward. I'm having a bad hair day, so I'm wearing a hat. And I lead Forward VC, which is an early stage climate syndicate investing in Europe, North America, and Israel primarily. We do 100 to 500K checks into promising companies and then try to be the most helpful investor on the table when it comes to connections, introductions, and growth. But now let's hand it over to, speaking of founders, we've got 7 incredible ones on the program. So this is your first time here on the Startup Tank. Each of our climate founders will have 5 minutes to pitch our incredible panel here, followed by 5 to 15 minutes or so of Q&A. At the end of the session, we'll vote on a startup of the night. We'll see if we can get some consensus among our investors, and they'll be crowned startup of the night, which comes with all of the glory and none of the hassle of money. But the point is not to get the money here. It's to set up meetings with our awesome panelists, other investors tuning in, and our syndicates pretty interested in a lot of these companies as well. So are we ready to kick things off and hand it over to the companies, guys? Awesome. Then I will take each of you out of the screen and hand things over now. First things first, let's kick it off. How about Renan with Carbonade? Renan, I met through one of the guests we had on our previous program, Yehuda. Renan's doing some pretty incredible stuff when it comes to recaptured CO2 and converting it into value. You want to take over and share what you're doing, Renan?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I start by saying thank you, Matt. I mean, you're doing incredible thing, very important thing. You know, building an ecosystem is not less important than developing, deep tech technology. And I learned that last week runways were melting in UK. So, there's not a better time to do some action now. So Carbonade, well, many people ask me what's the name is all about. So actually, as you
one sec, Renan, as well. If you want, you can share your screen and then I can start the clock for you. Sound good?
I will use, alternative presentation, some slides.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to do out of the box thinking. So, and giving me more time, I hope. So basically, Carbonade is like if you take lemon, which in principle, not tasty, and you make a lemonade out of it. It's the same idea that we would take carbon, which has very bad PR, but eventually we will make carbonate, which most of our world is based from carbon. So maybe instead of slides, as we have very limited time, I brought a small friend with me. That's my small friend. It's a very tiny miniature olive tree that actually makes a beautiful process, which eventually we try to imitate. Nature, as it's evolved for million of years, this small friend is actually taking CO2 out of the air, combining it with water, using renewable energy from the sun, and combining and actually building carbon-based product. For instance, this tree is building sugar. From his perspective, is growing up, and so the idea is that to imitate what nature does its best, and to do something which is very simple. So basically, I hope you see my screen. We call ourselves a carbon to value company, and the idea is that even though it sounds ridiculous, we want to take the air and make good stuff out of it. And there are dozens of applications that actually you can make from air. What we do for climate is actually, or the principles that we are acting upon is called electrochemical action, building a kind of a cell. I call it as a magic box that actually imitates the same principle, getting a flow gas of CO2 with a little amount of water. and producing and net negative fossil-free products by the end of the day. The idea and the basic principle, as you know, technology can solve most of the things that we are looking for, but the question is, does it make sense from the economical side? And my background is business, and I think everything by the end of the day should be judged by the price and the competitiveness of the reaction. And what we came up is that we're utilizing a patent which was developed at Weizmann. Sorry, but I haven't mentioned that I'm from Israel. So we are collaborating with Weizmann Institute. It's quite a famous university in Israel, and they developed through the years a unique catalyst that enables this kind of reactions, that uses a very low consumption of energy, and therefore all the process actually makes sense. At the moment, we are not handling the capturing mechanism. We will be connected to either DAC companies or companies that actually capture the carbon at source. And what we saw in this area is that once the carbon or the carbon dioxide is being captured, there is not much value out of it. And the most conventional way is to inject it underground and and verify that it will stay there forever. But if you, from the other side, needs for a living carbon-based product, why not connect this open ties and make this completely as a circular economy approach? Our basic business model is just we will connect to a manufacturing of CO2, large quantities of CO2, either being from power plants, metal fabrication plants, and offer them or others some process out of what we will do. Here you have a molecule at the lower side of the slide. You have a very small molecule that is combined from carbon monoxide, which is actually derived from carbon dioxide, and 4 atoms of hydrogen. This molecule actually is a methanol. This is fuel. And if you're looking for the road to produce synthetic fuel, what you actually need is a company like Carbonate that will help you to produce this kind of molecules. And then the road to synthetic fuel is there because, as I see it, especially for aviation fuel, for plastic, for detergents, there's...
And your time is up, Ranan.
Oh, sorry for that. So,
no worries. It was a great pitch. Let me bring the other investors back in as well, and then we can move into the question segments of the round.
Okay.
So let's hand things over to Daniel. Do you want to take over first? What questions do you have for Ranan and for Carbonade?
Sure, Ranan. Thank you so much for your pitch. I really like your excitement. I think it's clear that you're very passionate about the topic. I mean, we only have very limited time, but obviously I would be very curious to learn more about your product, about the chemistry behind it, understand a little bit more how defensible it is. And then the slide where you had business model, maybe to just raise the second question is, how do you want to make money? Because the business model was more, I would say, a product slide, or like kind of explaining the process. If you could maybe elaborate a little bit more on how you, a use case, how you make money, let's say at an Aeon power plant, and how this would look like.
Okay, so the basic idea is that we designed and developed a unique catalyst, which is built from abundant metals. And that's the key element. This presence of abundant metals, this unique combination, is patented and enables to produce this carbon dioxide conversion to carbon monoxide. That's actually the first and initial and most important step on the way to make it, profitable and logical. Our benchmark for today, for instance, if I take carbon monoxide, which is CO, we can produce relative to today's market price about 60% less of what's its value today. Taking CO2 as a feedstock, which could be found or sold at around $50 per ton, make this process and then offer carbon monoxide for instance, metal fabrication. Metal fabrication is a great user of carbon monoxide because it helps them to reduce the presence of oxygen on their process, and they're buying megatons of carbon monoxide, and we are going to offer them a price which they can meet, and of course they gain the credits they comply with ESG regulation, meaning they will be using a green, carbon monoxide and net negative product. So basically, on a nutshell, this is it. But of course, I can elaborate a little bit more when in person.
I understood it's patented, so that's already great.
To quickly throw something on top of that, you said that acquiring CO2 at a price of $50 per ton. Yeah. That's a lot lower than the current targets for carbon capture.
Yeah, well, carbon capture is a different things. I mean, I will connect to, for instance, a DAC company after they already captured. So imagine if you're a DAC company, you have, once you capture the CO2 and you get paid for that, now you have a lot of effort in verify that the captured CO2 will not run away and release to the atmosphere. Meaning you have to combine yourself or to organize with a third party that either combining it with water or with minerals, and that's or deliver it to with pipes to the ocean and bury it in wells, and that costs money. I'm actually willing to save the money, $50, and give me this CO2 in tons, and I will verify that it will be converted to a green stamped product.
Thanks for clarifying. And in terms of investors, when you have questions, you can also just pop up. There's no need to be super orderly or raise the hand. If you've got questions, Laura, Moritz, Daniel, just feel free to voice them. If not, Laura, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm curious who your biggest competitors are. And I know you have your patent, but how are you differentiated from those competitors?
Okay. So actually I can spend an hour of that, but in principle, there are basic two approaches to convert CO2 today. The conventional way is using high temperature reactions. This is the old chemistry that's been done like 100 years ago. There are many mechanisms to use some reverse water gas shift and other solutions that can take CO2 and break it out to produce CO. But if you use high temperature, meaning you have to keep the system working 24/7, then you cannot really rely on renewable, or you have to decide to do something or sort of a kind of a storage in order to compensate for instance, your night working. So our approach is low temperature reaction, and as far as I see it, there is a very limited offering today in the market. I think the benchmark, which is the most commonly known company that uses similar things that we do, is called 12. Is a company that just closed their round B, if I recall, and they're using basically different catalysts. We came with a different approach, but they use some kind of a different, also patent catalyst. And we think a catalyst will bring something else to the market. As we understand, there's a kind of a glass ceiling of performance in compared to OpEx, to electricity consumption, but not less important, the stability of the process. In any chemical reaction, there is a kind of degradation a long time. And our catalyst looks like a very promising catalyst that can last for thousands and thousands of hours and therefore can offer something which is new at the market. It's like it's a groundbreaking novel solution. So hot temperature, low temperature, and our compared to others.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. Maybe just to add on that, where are you today? So you have the patented solution, but how long do you need it to actually bring this kind of process to a customer?
Okay, so where we stand today is actually the catalyst already tested and proven. Now we need to wrap it up in a working cell, in industrial, because till now it's been conducted at the lab scale electrolyzer, which is a bit small, and we think about something which is much bigger. And the principle is that once we conclude or agree on the size, it will be stacked. The principle is that it's stacked in serial, dozens of this kind of cells. So this will be our most incoming challenge to reach what I believe will be our first prototype within 12, not more than 18 months from today. Then the next step will be pilot and commercialization. I hope I covered that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Looking at, I'm not quite sure how much time we have.
We probably have time for one more question if you've got one.
Well, if I can add, we're an early stage pre-seed round. We just got several offering. We want to reach a target of $1 million. That's it. And we arrange something like 600K, 700K already from hard commitment, and we need to add up to additional 3 to 400K, and that will enable us to kick off.
Very cool. Any other questions from our panelists?
Not so far. Thank you.
Well, then, thanks for pitching, presenting. And now I'm going to move it on to our next startup of the night. And of course, investors can always reach out to founders if they want to set up meetings and such after the program, hopefully get some funding done. But I want to move things on now to another company who's doing some pretty interesting stuff. Let's go over into the energy space. Ankit was here first with Sheru. You want to take over and tell us what you're doing with AWS of Energy?
Matt, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You have 5 minutes on the clock, starting now.
Great. First of all, thank you for having me here. So we are basically, So we are basically building cloud energy storage in the country right now. I think energy storage is a very clear problem for a lot of stakeholders. In India, it is becoming a very pressing problem now because our renewable sector is growing very aggressively. Today, we have around 120 gigawatt of solar energy production capacity in the country, which is set to grow to around 175 gigawatt by the end of this year itself. Basically, today, around 20% of our power is coming through solar and wind, and it is set to grow to around 75% of our energy mix, which means around 500 gigawatt of power will be coming through solar and wind. Now, the thing is that a lot of this capacity is going to waste because we don't have any physical energy storage infrastructure in the country. And majority of our energy storage infrastructure needs are short duration. So a lot of infrastructure projects are failing to prove their financial feasibility in the country because of their limited utilization. What it is causing is that around 30 to 40% energy loss occurs through renewable power developers in the country, and utilities also suffer up to 10% transmission and distribution loss due to the lack of energy storage infrastructure in the country. Now, when it comes to India, India is the third largest energy market globally. Our current requirement is around 20 gigawatt hour. Our installed capacity is less than 1 gigawatt hour. Currently, the addressable market is around $2 billion, but it is set to grow alongside renewables, which means that it is a $26 billion opportunity by 2030, by when we'll need around 260 gigawatt hour in the country. Now, our solution is that since majority of our energy storage requirement is short duration, instead of building dedicated infrastructure, we are aggregating idle battery capacity connected onto the grid and creating a cloud energy storage system for renewable developers and utilities in the country, which basically means that there is going to be a virtual on-demand and pay-per-use option for these power enterprises where they could potentially make 2.5 to 3x of cost benefit on this added expense by saving their wasted energy. Now, in India, it's a very interesting time to do this because recently OTC platforms have been authorized in the country. Not only they have been authorized in the country, they are also protected from the incumbents in the space, which are Gencos, power trading exchanges, IPPs, Discoms, Transcos. So none of these guys are allowed to really open up over-the-counter platforms for providing on-the-spot services, whether it is buy, sell, or store, to any of the clients in the country, whether it's a CNI customer, whether it's a large-scale consumer, whether it's a state. So none of the incumbents in the power sector are really allowed to operate OTC platforms in the country, which basically creates a very strong protective mode from the regulatory side itself for players like us. Now, our revenue model is straightforward. We are basically aggregating battery capacity connected to the grid, making it bidirectional, and we are basically providing a warehousing proposition to power enterprises. The way India's business environment is configured, we have around 60 to 65 enterprises engaged in the business of solar and wind power production. We have 4 private major utilities. So essentially, these are the people who are at the knife's edge, who are facing the problem because of lack of energy storage infrastructure. And we are basically providing them access to this network of batteries and making them and charging them on a pay-per-use basis based on their space consumed, time that they have spent in the network, and their urgency. Typically, the seed price point is $100 per kilowatt per year. In addition to this, we have built a very comprehensive software platform so that we can also promote battery capacity in the electric mobility sector in the country. We have a lot of 2 and 3 wheelers which are growing in the country, and there is a requirement of value-added services for the supply chain in automotive as well as electricity side to build that infrastructure overall in electric mobility in the country. So we have also built a very comprehensive software platform to integrate battery manufacturers, battery financiers, and battery distributors onto a single platform. This is also generating revenue for us, but the core idea is to build a cloud energy storage system which we can scale globally, because this is not just a problem for India. There's a very fundamental problem that majority of the storage requirement is essentially just caching energy for short duration and releasing it later at night. So I think broadly, just to explain how exactly the product works, is essentially we are a warehouse for power enterprises to store energy. Energy logistics is the problem of the customer. And the customer is people like Amazon Power, Azure Power, Renew Power, people who are producing solar and wind energy, or utilities. Both these customers have the capability of moving electricity around on the grid with the help of their open access licenses. What they essentially need is to locate intermittent battery capacity, which is coming online onto the grid and is available for short duration energy storage function. So essentially, we have just integrated the entire protocol stack of battery management with the open access of the grid.
Time is up, Ankit. I'm sorry. That was either way an awesome pitch and an awesome company doing something super interesting and meaningful. I'm gonna bring in our other investors here. Yes. And then hand things over to them. Laura, Daniel, Moritz, do you have questions to kick things off that you want to ask Ankit, including perhaps Ankit, how much are you raising and what round is this? Just as a quick one.
So we are raising our Series A. We are already operating at a $2.5 million ARR. We are growing around 30% month over month. We have around 6,000 batteries in the network. We basically want to now build technology to integrate this bi-directional tech with electric vehicles, broadly electric buses and passenger 4-wheelers. And that is why we are looking for raising this 10 million series, is to basically expand our capability to aggregate more resources on the grid.
Okay, good question. So what is the biggest challenge you face at the moment, besides maybe closing the round, raising capital, but you need to overcome?
So I think in India, we are still playing catch up with the capacity that is coming into the market. So basically, electric mobility is not very widespread. There's not widespread adoption of electric mobility right now in the country. But the thing is that it is important to bring this technology right now itself, because the margins in India are very thin. So essentially, you have to integrate as many revenue streams as much possible to accelerate the adoption. So essentially, we have to go hand in hand with electric mobility at least for a couple of years while we are scaling this technology. So the idea is, the core reason why I reached out to Matt and I'm featuring on the show is that we want to expand globally, want to build partners overseas as well, because the core proposition is essentially software.
And I'm very glad you did reach out. It is an incredibly, incredibly interesting company. That said, do you foresee challenges? So in my opinion, you have strong local network effects, but internationally, you won't have network effects. This isn't Airbnb where I go travel somewhere else and it's great because there's an Airbnb there. It's Uber, and anybody can come in and start a competitor in a local geography. How do you grow and scale effectively with a business model like that?
So we are focusing only on being a technology platform. We strongly understand that in geographies like US and Europe, regulators themselves are creating more equitable participation of everyone who has some kind of distributed energy resources. So it can be a telecom company who has idle battery capacity at their telecom towers, and the regulator is making easy for those businesses to enter into demand response schemes and participation on the grid. So essentially what they need is the technology to be able to do so and do that directly. So in geographies like US and Europe, what we want to do is provide this capability, whoever has the battery resources or distributed energy resources with them, so that they can monetize with the help of this and increase their adoption. So essentially our idea is just to make this software layer which can help renewable scale and also electric mobility scale. So it's just a scalability platform that we are giving to our partners. So that's the core network effect that we're looking for. The more we operate, the more data we gather, the more accurate prediction of stability on this platform we can, the more better supply and demand matching we can do.
I have one question, Sheru. Let's say you get the funding. How much do you distribute into the hardware and how much in the software development?
So I come from a robotics background. I was a robotics engineer prior to this. We strongly understand that in these kind of spaces, the hardware commoditizes really fast. So we are just focusing on solving the key integration problems. We are not going full blown into developing new hardware from scratch. There is a lot of hardware available, which just needs to be integrated with the protocol stack. So largely our expenses towards setting up the lab in India, we don't have enough resources in India. So we have to set up our own lab. We have to set up our own simulated environment to be able to demonstrate this as a capability to the utilities. I mean, in India, this capability of distributed energy resources is very far. It's very, I would say, it's a very new concept for everyone, right? It's totally new for everyone. So we have to create those simulated environments so that they can imagine it. So largely the expense will be going towards building the software and doing pilots with enterprises to get that initial scale with them.
Great, because that would be important to me that you put most of your resources of the funding into developing your product, your USP, however you want to call it, and not allocate too much into the batteries.
Yes.
Exactly. And then maybe a last question. I saw on LinkedIn you already have 60+ employees. Like, how does the round fit to your company size? It's just a little bit, it sticks out. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
So we basically have grown around 50x in the last 12 months. I mean, if we were doing, today we are doing $2.5 million of ARR. Just 12 months back, we were doing very small amounts, 50x less than that. So far, we have been very capital efficient in terms of identifying the key bottlenecks, key things that have to be developed, and growing the business more and more with the help of minimum development. So majority of these 60 guys that we have, it's a good mix of non-tech and tech people. It's not only the technical guys, we also have a lot of non-tech guys in the team who are sort of propagating this concept across, whether by tying up with enterprises, by stakeholders, by research, by advocacy, whatever means. So largely this round size is now to sort of build credibility in the market so that larger enterprises feel safer working with us. When it comes to utilities, they're going to probably use this for multi-megawatts. And they need that we are going to stick around if they are going to give us a 10-year contract. They are happy to give us a 10-year contract, but they want to know that are we sticking around or not, right? So I think in certain sense, this round is not at a very fundamental level. It gives us credibility that we are here to stay and we are thinking long. We are not just thinking from short-term trends in the market. We are looking at it from a long-term perspective and working our way backwards. Cool, thank you.
And I'm curious what you're looking for in your investors from this round, and then also what geographies you're thinking about expanding into first beyond India.
So right now, primarily we are looking for those investors who can help us open the demand side in the energy space. So in a lot of markets, it's very difficult to sort of tie up with these incumbents, especially since majority of the demand side of energy storage is still controlled by utilities. It's not completely deregulated in a lot of enterprises, in a lot of geographies also. So in that sense, it is important that we go via the investor route. They help us connect to the utilities, the energy majors, so that the demand side is opened up for us. Once we have the demand side sorted, then we can simply start extending our software platform to whoever has distributed energy resources on the grid. Right. So I think that's what we're primarily looking for in terms of our investors. In terms of the geography, we would want to start very small at an island level. And I think I would probably love to start it in Europe, some of the maybe in Philippines, those kind of territories where we can do a very small islanding pilot, and the regulatory environment is also very favorable towards distributed energy resources because of the fundamental nature of energy mix in these geographies, right? So I think when scaling up next to India, first I would not like to invite a lot of challenge. First, I would just like to expose my technology to those nuances, commercial nuances of overseas, and see how basically what all we have to do in terms of making it more robust so that we can handle the certifications and compliances of Europe and US. I mean, in India, we don't even know what it is. So we are not facing as much burden of compliances and certifications, but in US and Europe, we'll get to see a lot of compliances and certifications. Yeah.
Maybe a quick question on how's the competition in India? How fast can you grow this year?
So in India, we are the first startup doing this. There is no one remotely close to this in India doing this. So we basically first started aggregating battery swapping stations in the country. We saw that battery swapping stations were growing because of many macros in the country's economy. We are a big BOP economy. We have a lot of 2 and 3 wheelers. We have very crunched out infrastructure. So battery swapping is growing very fast. So we are primarily piggybacking on that in India. So in India, we can continue growing. But in basically in India, our next step is that we lock in the supply side. Because there are only 4 or 5 guys that we have to lock in to acquire the entire supply. In passenger 4-wheelers, we have only 2 OEMs who predominantly control the entire market. Then we have only 4 OEMs who control the entire electric bus market in the country. So right now, my idea is that first, we should just integrate our bidirectional charging tech with their products, with their vehicles, before their supply chains get set. Once their supply chains get set, then there's a very high resistance from OEMs to sort of shift to a new technology. So first, we want to just lock in that supply. And then we can simply start integrating with the demand one by one. So we just have to integrate with 3 private utilities in the country and top 8 independent power producers in the country. All in all, 11, 12 enterprises that can give us around 70 to 80% market share in the longer run, because these guys control large part of the market. The business environment is highly lopsided in the country. So that's how we are thinking, that first we should just lock in the demand, lock in the supply. And then as the supply comes into the market, of course, we'll grab the largest market share, but both the sides need to be locked in. Then we'll start moving to other geographies and start doing the same thing over there as well.
Sounds like an easy ride.
No.
Yeah, very interesting business case. From my side, as a recommendation, I probably would stick to India first and try to build out my market power right there and learn more. And then, of course, also get a better or good interpretation of European and US markets, as there are a lot of companies also, I think, in a much heavier competition at the moment.
Yes.
Why not just own Asia and Southeast Asia, where there is a much stronger, the cultures, the way vehicles are used, the way cities are laid out, it's all much stronger. You're going to have less competition. You're going to have lots of funding, and you're going to have a lot more inbredness with the energy providers. Why not just take over all of Asia and Southeast Asia?
So in terms of growth and scale up plans, that's what the idea is. First, we want to stick to India, lock in, scale up in India, and start capturing the neighboring economies. But the idea is that out here in Asia, the energy side regulations are still evolving. And while they are evolving, we need to expose our technology to some country which has the deregulation in the energy side at a very advanced stage. This can be purely a pilot also in Europe, purely a pilot in US, but maybe not more than that at all. But that's the only thing that we want to just sort of seed somewhere in US or Europe to keep our technology on its forefront. Otherwise, what we end up doing is we just start customizing to one specific geography, and the solution becomes very customized to India. Then we would find it very difficult to get out of India, even for emerging economies. Yeah.
What about Singapore? You would have all of those characteristics as well, wouldn't you?
Yes. So Singapore, Japan, these are two geographies where this can be tried out. And I'm speaking to some guys over there. But I think in these geographies, the turnaround time is also very high, since the compliance and certification level is also to a next extreme. I mean, it's we have to do a lot of compliances to get into Japan. Yeah.
Understood. Any other questions? Go ahead.
But I mean, we have just raised $1.6 million so far. So, I mean, we have to be very capital efficient in this way, taking decisions very cautiously. I mean, climate tech is still growing in India. It's a very evolved scheme out there in US and Europe, but in India, it's still growing. Yeah.
It's impressive. Your revenue is higher than your raise. It's a solid sign for traction. That's for sure. I want to move things along, unless any of our investors have another question that they want to ping at Ankit. Do you guys have anything you want to add before we move on? Okay, then Ankit, thanks so much for sharing the company. Absolutely love what you're doing. Absolutely love how far you've gotten along with things. But now we're going to hand things over to the next startup of the night. And while I go through the little clicks to remove our investors from their remote panel, I just want to tell you all again that today's episode is brought to you by Leva, the best way to set up a digital SPV. If you've got to raise money for your company, or if you're deploying capital into companies like we do, setting up a syndicate and an SPV, Leva is a great way to do it. Forward.vc/Leva for more details. And if you're interested in climate companies in general and you're an accredited investor, this is by no means a solicitation, but if you want to learn more about what our syndicate does, forward.vc/syndicate, the number forward.vc. We invest in great companies that move the world forward. I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. I don't know about you guys. So how about we hand things over to Local Ocean, who is revolutionizing the future of sustainable shrimp farming. It's a fun one. You want to take things over, Christoph, and share what you're doing?
Yes, I can do that. I'm just launching the PowerPoint.
Awesome. And tell me when you are ready and you are on the clock. Let's roll.
All right, so welcome guys to Local Ocean, indoor shrimp farming technology. And what you see on the picture is where we operate from in the Baltic states in Lithuania. And the reason why ultimately our technology grows shrimps, and it's a big business around the world. It's 25 million tons produced and sold of shrimps every year. Europe imports about 400,000 tons per year of frozen shrimps, mostly from Asia, but less than 100 tons is produced locally in Europe. So we thought that was a really good business opportunity, as well as also a very climate changing opportunities and helping saving the world, because shrimp aquaculture is basically taking the place of mangrove on the Asian and South America, and about 5,000 square kilometers of mangrove have been bulldozed to transform into what you see in the picture. It's about 700,000 football pitches of mangrove transformed into shrimp pond. Worst offender of all is the wild shrimping with trawlers, and the shrimping industry has the worst unwanted bycatch ratio and the worst and represent about 30% of all the dead fish that the fishery industry catches every year. It takes 5.7 kilo of dead fish to harvest 1 kilo of wild shrimp that you love. So we wanted to change that and bring it closer to the consumer. So in Lithuania, we built the farm and we set up our task to build an indoor, scalable, sustainable, and cost-efficient production solution. So hardware and software, answering many of the UN SDG goals, and also bringing fresh shrimps, not frozen, fresh shrimps to the European consumer for now. Status and team, we have a team of 9 people in various type of skill set. We've been at it for about 5 years, investing 2 million euros of our own money. And now our hardware and software is at TRL 5-6 status. It means that basically what we do works. So we build a farm, we build a prototype. Over the past 5 years, we failed miserably in trying to grow shrimp indoor because it's not being done cost efficiently and it's not being done. There's no guideline. We had to invent many of the processes. So we've built a kind of standalone, scalable hardware solution with a specific architecture, as well as a software that manages all the production cycles. So we can produce on the same footprint about 130 kilos of shrimps per month, 130 kilos of shrimps per month. And the shrimps grows in a 100-day cycle compared to about 6 months in the traditional pond aquaculture outdoor. Yeah, so what you see here is a kind of prototype, one of our prototype. So it's a 2-stage, one is empty, the other one is full. And basically what you need to take away from it is just it works. It's low energy consumption, is high production, and we can produce it in Lithuania, which goes from minus 30 degrees in the winter to plus 30 degrees in the summer. So anywhere can we build shrimp farm using our tech. How we will make money? So we want to build and operate farms ourselves, and currently our shrimps are sold in national retailers in Lithuania, Maxima and Rimi, and Bitfood, which is a retailer for the Orica business. But first and foremost, we want to license our technology to other fish farms that wants to diversify, shrimp farms that want to have a cost-efficient way of producing shrimps, and then partner with industries and engineering company that specialize in building fish farms. The vision to become world leaders in indoor shrimp farming technology, and we're raising 700,000 euros at the moment. And we are supported by many blue investment accelerator and organizations around Europe, and we've just been also accepted to another blue fund right now. So open to questions.
Very good. Your time is up. Perfect timing on that one, Christoph. Let me bring in our other investors. It's super interesting what you guys are doing, especially as it's almost dinner time. One of the things, quick question. One of the quick questions I had, just as I'm pulling everybody in, you said you're growing your shrimp 80 days faster, almost twice as fast. Are there any implications of that on health? I got to imagine if you're eating something that grows that fast, it's just getting fat real fast.
The thing is, the shrimps, you can feed it as much as you want. They're just going to keep on eating. They're just like, they're eating a lot, always, all the time. So shrimps can grow very fast, like up to 3 grams per week. When they are like at the post-juvenile stage, teenager, let's say, like just normal human teenagers. When the shrimps are teenagers, they just eat all the time and they grow fast. But there is no implication on the health of the shrimps. We test them on a regular basis for signs of pathogens or diseases or things like that. And so far we control everything, just all is fine. I mean, in laboratory, we get some people that can grow shrimps at 20 grams in 70 days in lab conditions. We grow at industrial scale between 100 and 120 days to 20 grams average.
Okay, I need to ask, how do you do it? I mean, what makes your shrimp growing process so different than others, and why is nobody else doing it?
It's nascent. The indoor shrimp farming is where the salmon indoor fish farming was 20 years ago. So it's just the beginning. We started to transition from outdoor because it's super cheap to grow it outdoor. I mean, you take a bulldozer, a piece of mangroves, you bulldoze everything, then you get some water from the sea. When the water is dirty, you put it back at sea, you don't care. And then you use people that you pay $5–10 a day maximum. So it's very cheap. This is why the shrimp are super cheap right now, but it costs the environment a great deal, and all the shrimps that you eat or you have ever eaten in Europe have been a frozen product. So we're bringing a kind of different kind of premium approach to the product, like better protein. I mean, we feed them with non-genetically modified cereals. It's currently, yes, fish flours, which is not very good for the environment. I get that, but we're testing insects flours at the moment, and we are testing also other source of protein for the shrimps. But our shrimps taste really nice.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm curious, you mentioned that you're doing some direct sales and also future you're going to license your tech. Can you talk through what the revenue split is currently and what you expect it to be in the future between those two?
Well, right now we're not selling the technology because we're TRL 5.6. Okay, so we have not packaged the technology fully in order to start selling it, which is in the horizon of 18 months from now will be good. So the shrimps that we sell right now, you also need to consider them as byproduct of us developing the technology. So we produce shrimps, and instead of basically throwing them away, we'd rather sell them right now. So we are R&D type of center. So 100% of our revenue stream is from shrimp selling, which is not a lot. It's less than 100,000 euros per year right now. But in the next 3-4 years, I would say it's going to be 70% shrimps, 30% technology, and in the next 7 to 10 years, it's going to be a 50-50 split, because we are going to license the tech. So building a shrimp farm costs several million euros, is capex intensive, let's say. So the first progress of the industry is going to take some time, but we saw this year 3 shrimp farms being funded in Europe, so they could potentially be our customers, and we receive calls on a regular basis from entrepreneurs that want to build a shrimp farm in Europe. So, but we have nothing to sell for now.
I think for me, the product, obviously, like, you know, it's very clear, and the problem, you know, you're solving. However, from a VC, from a venture capital perspective, I'm still wondering whether this is a VC case, whether essentially it is scaling enough, and whether you want a VC even, you know, in your company, like what the value proposition of a venture capitalist would be versus, like, you know, lending, you know, your assets at the bank, and, like, you know, raising more debt and just, like, you know, growing another shrimp farm, where you're 100% of the company, and where you essentially, like, you know, grow your own empire. Can you elaborate how a VC could help?
Money banks to the people who have lots of money. Okay, so you need collaterals in order to get loans and debt financing. So it's all easy. It's great to have debt because you don't dilute yourself. Is it a VC problematic? Well, you need to be into impact, and you need to also want to make a difference with your funds. It's not just about like the quick turnaround, like 3-5 years and then move on. It's a longer term type of investment that it's a nascent industry. We want to focus on the technology and the licensing of it. But yeah, it's building its hardware. It's just not software. I've been in the software industry 20 years. I know what SaaS means, and how scalable software are, this is a different game. We are changing the way shrimps are being produced closer to the consumer, and also long-term, maybe reversing the trend of destruction of mangroves, because they will become irrelevant.
How do you go ahead, Daniel?
No, I mean, the impact obviously on the sustainability side is clear. The only question is how defensible is this technology of feeding shrimps a certain way. And I guess this is where we would have to understand more. I'm just saying a VC, it becomes interesting for a VC if it's a very defensible.
We're not feeding them, we're just growing them in a different environment, and it's a different ways than fish farming indoor. Okay, we have different water, we have a different ways and approach to water, different architecture than concrete built tanks. It's completely movable and stackable, and it's a different approach.
Right, and all I'm saying is it going to be a consulting business or is it a scalable product? It's more food for thought. It's like, nothing we have to answer today.
Pun intended. How do you see lab grown meat potentially becoming a competition? So a lot of people that would shift towards more sustainable meat sources may also shift towards more sustainable seafood. What do you think about that lab grown salmon, that lab grown steak? And how that's going to affect you? Exactly. Where do you see that if your time frame is 7 to 10 years?
It's still 25 million tons of shrimp being produced. So there's a lot of, I don't know about you, I'd rather eat a lot less, but eat a lot better. So it's a question of choice. You can eat proteins, lab grown shrimp, but that's not shrimp. It just look like shrimp, and the protein chemistry is of a shrimp, but that's not a shrimp. The texture is different. The taste, I haven't tried it, so I don't know what it tastes like really. It's just getting into more sustainable farm to fork farming, is just making the product better, more locally grown, just eat better. You can eat lab food if you want, or you can eat frozen cheap food if you want. Some people make the other choice of buying locally grown food, and that's what we're offering with our scalable shrimp farming system.
That was my only question is, do you think they're doing it because the quality is better, or do you think they're doing it because they want to save the planet? And I would argue it's probably B, except for in certain instances.
It's a different way. It's a different approach. We're going to need these lab grown food for protein intake, but it's a long way before this replaces real grown food, I would say.
Understood.
Maybe one question, talk about long way and impact. So what is your assumption on how many shrimp farms will be deployed within the next
year?
Okay,
so I made a calculation with the current state of our technology, okay? To produce the 400,000 tons of shrimp European consume right now, we would need to build 800 farms of 20,000 square meter each, running about 300 of our systems and producing 500 tons per year each. So there is a lot of opportunities to build shrimp farms in Europe. The market is huge. And we are one of the 8 shrimp farms in Europe, and we are probably one of the 2 or 3 that actually are selling shrimps and actually can produce shrimps all year round right now.
But that would be for the demand of the current price point for shrimp, which is lower than, it's a bit lower because there's a lot of frozen shrimp, correct?
The price point we want to achieve once scaled up, from the calculation, we should arrive at a production cost of 15 euros per kilo. So the shrimp we currently see, like the most expensive tiger shrimps, are retailing in Europe about 27, 30 euros. So it could be done cost effectively.
Understood. Any other questions from the rest of the panel? No, then I want to say thanks, Christoph, for sharing what you're doing. It's fascinating. I think it's certainly, we have a lot that needs to be done in the food system, and this is certainly part of the solution.
Some people have to do it.
Some people have to do it. Speaking of, let's bring Brooke on. Brooke with Goodmylk. We've got another person who's innovating on the food space, so to speak. Brooke, thanks so much for coming, and I would love to hear more about Goodmylk and what you're doing. Are you ready?
I am ready, and thank you. It's the perfect segue, shrimp to almond milk.
Yes, perfect dunkers, right? You are on the clock. Let's start now.
Excellent. Great to meet everyone. Let me just share my screen real quick. Can everyone see this?
Looking good.
Yes.
So I am Brooke Harris. I am the founder of Goodmylk Co. We make alternative dairy products. And Matt, I think I'm going to go a little off of my presentation script here, because I think you brought up a good question when we were chatting with Local Ocean, and you said, talking about the lab grown meat products. In our world, there are plenty of lab grown dairy products also. And you said, are they doing it for quality, or are they doing it to save the planet? And I think with the lab grown, you do have to choose one. And usually the quality and the taste is not quite there. We are setting out to prove that you can build a business in the food world and think about both. Think about quality and product. And in fact, we are planning to be, and currently are, the very best quality. And so the short version of what drives us is looking at the market. Really, I had my own health journey, but when you look at the market and look at plant-based dairy, something that's a product that people use every single day in their coffee in the morning, in their kids' cereal, in their smoothies. And the second you flip over and look at the ingredients, you'll see there's a bunch of really weird ingredients in these alt dairy brands and very little actual real food. Well, that's not what customers want. That's not why they're buying alternative dairy products. And so we decided to build a brand that is best quality, best products, 100% organic, and really delivers what consumers are looking for. We call it the zero compromise model. So superior taste, our alternative milks and creamers taste very close to the real thing, or at least delicious enough that you don't miss the real thing. We use only 100% organic ingredients. There's actual real nutrition there. So we have protein, we have healthy fats, we have vitamins in ours, really just by using real food ingredients and more of them. And then because of all these things, we have this really, we had this really beautiful accident where our products perform really well. And when I say perform, and I'm talking about alt dairy, I really mean in coffee, where most adults are consuming their alternative dairy. So it mixes with coffee really well. It steams, it foams, creates this beautiful latte art. If you're a coffee drinker and an alt milk drinker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, the options out there just aren't cutting it. And then we have this really great sustainability piece behind what we're doing, which I'm going to get into a little bit more later. Obviously, we're plant-based, so we get, a foot on the pedestal for that, but we think much, much beyond just being plant-based. So we're doing this by scaling some innovative formats of alternative milks that haven't been seen out there. Our first format that we came to market with was a frozen concentrate. The end user simply adds water, and they have this homemade quality, clean ingredient alternative milk powder. Alternative milk. That's been great. You hear the word frozen, you guys already know some of the roadblocks with that. And so we took it a step further, which took some technology, some innovation, some creativity, and created powdered alternative milks that are clean ingredient and still do all of the things that our liquid milks do, which is steam, perform, work really well. Omnichannel is an important plan for the future. We want to be the biggest clean ingredient alt dairy company out there. But we've had this really great opportunity to go in through specialty coffee shops first. And through them, we've learned a lot. We have some really amazing partners, but we've learned where alt dairy isn't working for them, not only in the performance and taste of it, but in the formats, the logistics, the operations, really what the issues are. And I'm going to get to that a little bit more in a second when I show you the newest product that we're launching for that channel. But to really, when you want to talk about impacting climate, tech is incredibly important. You can't not talk about food, and you can't not talk about how a food brand can make consumers feel and really make them act on something. And we've done that. We have a story, a mission, a brand, a purpose that really, really resonates with consumers. I'm going to hop off of this for a minute. We can get into the sustainability of all of our other things, the fact that we use hemp seeds, we use dry farmed almonds, everything's organic. We have really sustainable packaging with our frozen format. But I want to show you guys the newest product that we are launching literally in 3 weeks. We have it with some test partners right now.
10 seconds.
First of their kind, barista milk powders. And the sustainability piece of this is incredibly exciting because we are going to eliminate Tetrapak waste from the cafe scene. Some of our partners will literally eliminate hundreds of thousands of Tetrapaks from being used a year.
Time is up. As a quick question, what exactly is a Tetrapak?
Yeah, great question. So Tetrapak is a carton. Any freaking carton you see out there, pretty much, that is has a shelf-stable product in it. Tetra is the company that makes them. So these cartons are they're made with layered materials, and a lot of the materials are recycled allegedly, but the actual Tetra itself, because of the way it's made, cannot be recycled. Definitely here, I'm in the US, I'm in Los Angeles, and I did a trip to our local recycling facility to actually learn about it. And the only way that they can recycle them is by selling them back to China. So just not sustainable, and that doesn't really happen often. So really not sustainable at all. And each of the ones that coffee shops are using only make 4 drinks or less. So coffee shops are going through massive amounts of these cartons every single day and causing a huge amount of waste.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing and getting part of our coffee kick going. I want to kick it off to the other investors now, panelists. Who wants to jump in and ask Brooke something first?
I'll start. Thanks so much for your presentation, Brooke. As someone who drinks a lot of almond milk, I'm very excited about your product. And as someone who looks at the labels and is appalled by all the ingredients on the list, I'm curious what the shelf life of your product is. So if I were to go make almond milk, I have to consume it pretty quickly. I think like a lot of those added ingredients are preservatives. So can you talk a little bit about the shelf life of your product?
Yeah, so that's where the innovation comes in our formats. We had to create different formats in order to extend that shelf life. So frozen is the oldest, preservation method known to man. Frozen was our first method. That product will last several years in your freezer. Once it's thawed, it has 5 to 7 days, just like any other alt milk that you open. The powder we're really excited about because the short answer is eternity. We basically have just extracted water, so it has below a 0.02% water activity. So it will last a very long time.
And maybe where do you stand, in your company life cycle? Like, is it now like product is done and like the whole focus is sales? And maybe also to put this into perspective of the round that you're raising and the funds that you want to.
We're raising, thanks for the question. We're raising our seed round. It's a $3 million round, and we've closed and funded 2 million of the 3. We had launched first that frozen format into the cafe space. And so we did like around 1.5 million last year with that frozen. We'll do two this year with just the frozen. And then we're literally 3 weeks away from launching the powders in that cafe space. We have tested powders D2C just to see how people would react to them, and that's been well. And so there's a small amount of revenue that comes from online sales as well.
Awesome. But now the focus is on like growing your sales team across the US.
Yeah. So you can imagine an R&D, the R&D process just to make this powder, this version of the powder had to be the 2 keys are it had to be easily dissolvable. So the way our users will use it is they'll scoop it out of the bag into a reusable bottle, take it over to the sink, fill it up with water, and give it a shake. And so big hurdle to get it dissolvable in that way with any temperature water and really easily. And then the performance piece, it had to steam and texturize and mix in really well with coffee. So those were our two hurdles. It took us about 3 years to create a product that that worked that way. We've been doing a ton of testing behind the scenes. We brought panels in, we brought baristas in. Last Thursday, I had my first sales meeting with a really big account with it live in person. And I sat in my car after and cried because it went so well. Like everything that we wanted it to do and prove, it did. And it was really cool to see these like big names in the coffee industry validating it. So now we're just off to the races on sales.
Awesome.
What does that off to the races on sales strategy look like?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. We're really lucky that because we've been in this category for a few years. So we've gotten to know a lot of the big players in coffee and become really friendly with them. And the biggest obstacle we kept coming across was the frozen fat form factor is an issue. You know, there's people it works for, but these bigger partners, a lot of them, it won't work because of volume and logistics. And so we have the contacts for pretty much all of the partners that we want. And now it's just reaching out to them and showing them this product.
And how quickly do you think you can scale?
Yeah, very quickly. So we're launching what we're calling internally our pilot launch, which will be 6 months. And that will be with 10 partners that will range from 25 to 50 doors, so coffee shop locations. And then early next year, we'll open it up. The plan is to build a waiting list through this 6-month pilot and then open it up to other partners. And the cool thing about this is we can use distributors or we can ship direct. So it can be a national product very quickly, and then obviously eventually global very easily because we're not having to ship water or deal with shelf life.
I have a question for like high frequency coffee shops. How is the process in putting the milk together? Being a barista in the past, there's always like, okay, the next Tetrapak, open it, shoving it, pushing it through. Is that a little bit of a bottleneck? How do you deal with it?
So as a barista, you know the pain of making plant-based lattes and how they like don't ever turn out the way you want them to. They don't taste the way you want them to. We hear from baristas all the time, the taste and performance of this, they're like, no, this is dairy. Like they're very confused. And so that's a really important thing to understand, that the outcome is so much better. And yes, it does take a few more seconds. The idea is that you'd have, you know, like most cafes prep their cold brew, or they prep their matcha or their chai for the day. You'd prep your milk. So you'd have some prepped and ready to go for the day. The important thing is if you run out, you can make it within, 20 seconds. In case you run out, but the idea would be to prep in advance.
And does the consistency stay the same, or do I have to shake it always if it's stood there for quite some time? Or
yes, it will stay for hours, but you should always shake alternative milk as a barista. That's one of the rules, one of the barista rules. You pick up the bottle and you shake it. So it'll, in that sense, shelf life once made, the operation, it'll work very much like the boxed shelf stable alt milks that they're used to.
And sorry if this was mentioned, but what's the pricing compared to the almond milk and alternative milks that we see today?
That's the really exciting about going through this channel, because we're using so much less packaging. Even though the product's organic and way better quality, we're able to be really price competitive in that channel. And this channel allows us to build large volumes. So we're able to get even more price competitive over time as we have buying power.
In terms of selling power, DTC food is very, very challenging. DTC in general is very challenging. And your differentiation is going to have to come down to pretty much trade secrets and execution on the marketing. How do you see this in terms of growing and scaling to become something that is venture scale? And how do investors get their money back?
Yeah, so through that B2B channel, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Oatly, the oat milk company. They're a global company. When they go into a new region or a new country, they always go through cafes. They go through specialty cafes. There's huge financial opportunity there. These cafes go through 50 to 100 gallons a week, and you bill them, they pay you in 30 days. There's no ad spend, there's no marketing spend. It's, very, very little human capital that it takes. So we're able to scale that channel pretty to a pretty beautiful number and be pretty aggressive in that channel because there's also very few competitors. D2C is a little bit more of a brand play and a testing grounds for us right now. It will become important in the future, as will grocery, but we can take this in the next 2 years. We can take this to a $20+ million brand just in that B2B channel. We have opportunity with cafes, and then we also have opportunity with, if you've heard of like super automatic or semi-automatic equipment where you walk up, you push the button and a latte comes out. And so there's no alternative milk powders that work for those machines right now. And we've been testing with a very large company and ours works. So we're looking at a contract or two in that space as well.
A la Nespresso?
Say that again?
A la Nespresso in little capsules?
That's definitely an option. So these are literally the equipment. So if you go into like a Peet's Coffee, or sorry, I don't know many of the global brands, but if you go into an airline lounge and you want a latte, there's not a barista there making it for you, right? This company puts their equipment there. The person working in the lounge dumps the bag of alt milk into the container once a day. And all you know is you go up and you're getting a tasty latte or cappuccino.
Very cool. Very cool. Does anyone else have other questions for Brooke? Moritz, Laura, Daniel, anything else you want to add?
Maybe just towards competition. I mean, there are a lot of brands out there. Yours seems very convincing. Your pitch, I believe there's definitely a high chance. But nevertheless, I mean, a cafe like Oatly and all the others, they all target the same customers at the end. What is your unique selling proposition in the end? Is it the price point, or is it more the impact that, of course, also play a big role in these kind of selling these negotiations?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. You know, I'm kind of the person that wants their cake and wants to eat it too, and we've built that into the business for better or worse. It's quality. You know, like I said, we're organic and really clean ingredient. It's taste. It's that performance piece. So you can walk into a grocery store and see 20 different alternative milk brands. When you go to a cafe, there's really only 3 or 4 options that cafes are even able to speak with, because those other brands don't have the option to play in that cafe space. So the go-to-market strategy, I think there's potential for a huge win there. And when we're talking about consumers, I think the brand story, if you look at our branding, if you have a second to go on Instagram and look at our branding, I think it's very different than and much more relatable than any of the other alternative milk brands out there. And then the sustainability piece, it's something we're very passionate and excited about, and we're starting to see the consumer and definitely our coffee shop partners, that being their number 1 or 2 priority.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Then thanks for coming on the Startup Tank pitching. You've survived the sharks, so to speak. I guess we can call them the coffee sharks in this instance. Sharks don't eat shrimp, so it doesn't really work there. But we can continue either way with the food theme a little bit. I want to hand things over now to Mary with Junee. And Junee is trying to make lunches a little bit more sustainable on a B2B corporate side of things, because everybody's ordering out and all of those ordering outs are ending up in the trash. Mary, you want to take over and share what you're doing with Junee?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to share here. Hopefully you can see my screen.
See your screen on the clock. Let's roll. What are you guys doing?
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Mary. I'm the co-founder of Junee. We're providing reuse as a service for food systems. So it's probably not news to you that the $1 trillion packaging industry is dominated by single use. That's largely because the cost of plastic has been artificially cheap for the last few decades. And obviously the convenience culture has put single-use products in high demand. And while convenience culture probably isn't going anywhere, the artificially cheap single-use era is over. So increasing cost of raw materials and supply chain disruptions have already affected packaging buyers as of this year. Many of our partners are reporting that their single-use prices are going up. And that's definitely not going to get better as climate change continues to disrupt supply chains over the next few years. But on top of that, governments are introducing taxes on single-use plastic in virgin plastic, like the UK's plastic packaging tax. And if that wasn't enough for you, negative consumer sentiment around single use has never been higher, which has already led many packaging suppliers or packaging purchasers to switch to costlier, more sustainable options. And while interest in sustainable packaging is high, food operators looking to switch to reusables still face logistical barriers. Our food operating partners have told us that even as cost becomes maybe parity or at least close enough, their lack of washing infrastructure and unwillingness to manage the operations and additional work make it unlikely that they'll just buy a bunch of Tupperware and implement reuse systems themselves. That's where Junee comes in. We're providing reuse as a service for semi-closed food systems. Now, what's a semi-closed food system? That's where people are unlikely to leave a place without throwing away or returning their packaging items to a managed centralized location. So think maybe your office or an office canteen, and not you ordering delivery at your house. How does it work? We work with food operators that borrow our durable food packaging at a fixed cost. It's about £1 per use. And they have the option of encouraging user tracking via mobile or web ordering app if they want to. We pick up from them from a centralized location, typically their loading bay or wherever else they get deliveries and pickups. And after commercially cleaning, we redeliver it back to them. And our tech focuses on the reverse logistics of grouping reusable items together and operating and moving them from densely co-located places. And if all of that sounds pretty logistically complicated, that's great news. We're the only reusable team with logistics-focused operating experience. Before starting Junee, I ran the packaging and logistics teams at HelloFresh US during the transition period between pre to post IPO, where we really needed to focus on our unit economics, and I helped build our logistics network and figure out how to ship food through the mail. My co-founder, Caroline, has had experience launching a semi-closed reuse system at Deloitte, where she replaced millions of single-use coffee cups with reusables. And our CTO, Mark, has over 15 years experience in tech and was last the VP of engineering at a B2B food delivery company. We're proud to be backed by Sustainable Ventures and my old boss at HelloFresh, who's the current CEO of the US. And our focus that is different from many other reusable packaging companies is that we're the only B2B focused and logistics-led reusable system. So our closed B2B network means that we actually have a pretty high natural rate of return because people want to get rid of their packaging before they leave the place. So over the last couple of months, we've seen that the return rate has been about 98%. And because we're focusing on these high volume, high density places, we actually have a pretty low cost per pickup and delivery and positive unit economics. And because we're in these closed systems, we don't force users to pay a deposit for their packaging or unnecessarily scan items, which we've seen as is a huge barrier to people actually using reusable packaging. And logistics-led means that we are not packaging manufacturers or resellers. The value in what we're building is a service platform. So today we provide the packaging and connect service providers to enable reuse, but long-term we'll look to move away from owning the packaging and simply providing reuse servicing, which is why our tech focuses on parcelizing the items to logistics industry principles of moving goods around.
And your time is up. Quick on your raise. How much are you guys raising? And it looks like you're growing well.
Yes. 5 minutes, I guess, goes a lot faster than you think. A lot faster than when I practiced here. We're raising $750K to get us to 200K MR.
Very cool. Let me bring in the other investors now so we can put you on the clock questions wise. Everybody is here. What questions do you guys have for Mary and Junee? What would you like to know about the company? You want to go first this time, Moritz?
Yeah, I can go first. We didn't really see it. I would be interested who's paying for the service.
So whoever is responsible for the collection of the items, so it would be the canteen operator or it could be the office. Whoever is in charge of that closed for use system is paying for the packaging, which may be different to who is paying for it today.
Okay, so in the end, the value proposition for an organization or what kind of hub is that the cleaning process, the canteen would have to bury is more expensive than your logistic and cleaning process?
Doesn't necessarily always have to be that it's more expensive in terms of cost. It could be more operationally challenging for them to stand up. And I think a lot of people think of this as being, hey, you know, can't they just clean it themselves? But you would sort of ask the question, obviously, there's a lot of service providers for cleaning for that purpose. Like, you know, sometimes I get a cleaner, even though I could very well clean my house myself. So there's lots of people that fit under that definition of wanting to transition over to reusables, but not having the space, the capacity, or sometimes just the desire to want to wash all their what would potentially be reusable packaging.
Okay.
Mari, great job on the pitch. I thought very well done. However, I have to challenge you on your competitor overview. You know, you guys being the only B2B focused logistics.
Cookie.
Exactly, since we just made an investment in a company called Cookie. So I'm convinced of the case. I love the case. They essentially, you know, tackle the B2B on the, you know, coffee shop side. So like, you know, little cups, you go over canteens. So that's going to be the next step. So I'm just thinking more how I can maybe help you, or, you know, if there's anything that I can do for you, maybe connect you with the CEO. Maybe that's an interesting conversation for you. You can think about that, follow up after. Yeah, we love the space. We just made a big investment. So definitely very cool cause, and we believe in it. And it's exactly this infrastructure play that is going to be the differentiating factor. And this is why we invested, not so much like, you know, the revenue for each cup, but much more the bigger picture of you essentially running the entire logistics backbone for a variety of B2B players.
And the other key to what he just said is we just made a big investment. So this is something that takes a lot of cash and it takes a lot of execution. Why are you guys going to be the ones that do this?
Well, I think I talked a little bit about my background. A lot of other people in the reusable space have great experience in whatever their careers before. We see a lot of designers. We see a lot of people just that are passionate about sustainability, but not a lot that have direct logistics experience. I'm sure there's lots of people starting businesses that I wouldn't have been able to put in a competitive landslide. But we are one of the teams that has, or I personally have a lot of experience in running logistics teams, being familiar with logistics networks. And we really think that that is the key to unlocking reusables at scale for a lot of different types of people and operators and service providers that want to transition to reusables, but just simply don't know how.
Have you seen your growth impacted by the current macroeconomic environment? If some companies might see this as something that they want to do, but it's not necessarily crucial to their operations, they need to cut expenses?
Actually, no. It has gone in the other direction. I mentioned a little bit at the very beginning about supply chain costs. At first, we had thought that, you know, this £1 per use price point was going to be something that only maybe certain companies would want to pay out of their sustainability budget. But what we're hearing from more and more operators is that that is becoming close to parity with what they would be paying for their sustainable, compostable packaging options because of, as I mentioned, the supply chain disruptions, as well as the fact that sometimes they simply just can't get the packaging that they normally order. So they are looking for other types of use cases and solutions.
And the cleaning process as such, is that also being done by a third party, or is this something you take care of yourself?
That's being done by a third party. So our ideal is to connect. We actually didn't really get into this, but what we think is our value proposition is that we are connecting lots of different service providers to provide reuse services. It's not magic to be able to wash the bowls. Lots of people do this. For example, if you've ever been to a wedding, there's someone there who owns the plates, who provides you the plates and washes the plates after. And we think long-term, we would be a platform that connects lots of these different providers to be able to enable many people to transition over to reuse. And that is where we've invested a lot of our resourcing, and not creating the packaging or trying to wash it ourselves or getting a warehouse and, you know, buying a dishwasher.
A big part of your business is execution on the logistics and supply side, but a big part of it's also execution on acquiring customers. How do you guys plan on acquiring customers? And is there any kind of little finagling you can do in terms of carbon credits as well for companies that implement something like this that are no longer throwing out quite so much?
What we found is that in the beginning, some people more on the investor side were asking about carbon credits, but actually on the company side and on the customer side, what people have seen is, or what we have observed is that people understand intuitively why a reusable item is better than a single-use item. And so the carbon credit hasn't necessarily been something that has become prioritized again as an area that we are looking into immediately, because it's pretty cumbersome and requires for you to have a long-standing supply chain. But our plan to acquire customers has actually been super interesting. We don't invest in a lot into marketing, and we're finding that people are finding us at this stage. We're not really sure how. We don't invest into Google AdWords or anything like that, but we have seen a lot of canteen operators, real estate providers, so big real estate companies, and other people with net zero goals looking to make an impact in the space outside of what they're already doing in terms of measuring their carbon footprint, buying carbon credits. They're looking to do more beyond that, and there's not a lot of available solutions. And so the way that we are trying to find them now is to go through different partnership channels. Like we have a delivery partner that does delivery. We provide the reverse logistics of that. As I mentioned, we're going through some real estate partners that have a big portfolio of lots of different companies, as well as recycling and waste managers. Right now, what they're seeing is that a lot of their waste streams are being contaminated with food packaging, which can't really easily be recycled or composted unless it's specifically segregated. And so there's value in them helping us to find customers, as well as it helps to keep their waste stream a little bit cleaner.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying that. How quickly do you think you can scale with something so capital intensive?
It's a good question. We don't, as I mentioned, we don't plan to necessarily own the bowls for forever. What we're trying to do with this 750K is to make London essentially an MVP for reuse as a service and the logistics behind it. There are tech companies out there that are looking at just providing the tech, but I think at this stage, we don't know enough about how people want to use and operate reusables in order for you to just build the tech itself. So what we're doing currently is we're offering the service to people, seeing how they're going to interact with the bowls. Some things that we've already seen is that users don't want to have to scan packaging in and out. Neither do restaurants or their operators. They don't want to have to scan things, the bowl and the lid again and again. And that's how a lot of competitors in this area are looking at reusable packaging. And we don't think that in and of itself scales. And so that's why we parcelize everything in reusable totes, and we track our inventory that way via various partners.
Understood. Then that's everything I got. I want to make sure we have enough time for the other companies as well. Laura, Moritz, Daniel, do you guys want to add anything?
No, I mean, I think you're thinking about the market, exactly right. It's one of those few spaces where you really have to create demand. You have to be an absolute sales monster. You have to be at every event. You have to talk to the city of London. You have to just, put yourself out there and be like, we're the guys. This is our little, sustainable bowl. And this is how it works. And then people are like, oh, this is interesting. Like, tell me more about it. It's none of those products where people actively come to you so much. At least that's what we felt. So to just have people that essentially are extroverts on the spectrum, close to 100% that are out in the field every evening, to just bring the message to the people is what we found is really the key here. So I think you guys seem to think about this exactly right.
I would just send free lunches to all the big businesses, send them a couple of them to the people in HR or the people that manage the supply chain, and say, by the way, we can fix this for you. Hope this tastes nice. Relatively cheap. It shows the product, and you can be obnoxious, and everyone likes free food.
Definitely need the 750K to execute that strategy.
Yeah. get local companies to donate it. It can be advertising for restaurants. Anyways, I want to move things on to the other two companies that we have. Thanks so much for presenting, Mary. You did a phenomenal job, and congrats with the company and everything that you guys are doing. Now let's move things over. We have two more incredible founders for the night. And of course, all of the Startup Tank and our Climate Investor Pitch Show, it's brought to you by Forward VC, our early stage climate syndicate investing in the world's top climate companies. We're doing our biggest deal to date. Pretty excited about that one. Battery tech company I can't say more about yet until we've signed that dotted I's and T's and all of that stuff. But forward.vc/syndicate if you guys want to learn a little bit more. Next up, let's hand things over to Vishwas, who's doing some pretty interesting stuff with YellowTin in terms of home electrification and trying to simplify the process for everyone of being a little bit more energy efficient and future forward when it comes to managing your home. You ready to take over, Vishwas? And I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Got your screen. You are good. You ready to go on the clock?
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. This is Vishwas, CEO of YellowTin. We are a software platform to help households transition to clean energy. And in that process, they will save money and cut emissions. My background has been in clean energy for a long time. And I personally went through the process to understand what I can do to my home and realized that it's extremely painful. And that motivated me to build YellowTin. My background has been in solar and storage. That's where the name comes from, yellow, and storing it into a tin. So, pretty much everyone understands that about 40% of our emissions come from the homes we live and the cars we drive. And the one way to clearly eliminate all of that is to focus on whole home electrification. So what that really means, starting to get rid of natural gas and gasoline and powering everything with clean electricity. So this translates to adoption of technologies and solutions such as solar and batteries when it comes to renewable, transportation, solutions such as electric cars, e-bikes, and then focusing on heat pump-based water heaters, air source heat pump dryers, induction, all of those. And then, of course, including low-cost energy efficiency measures like LED and thermostat. The big problem is all of these solutions are an industry unto its own, extremely fragmented, extremely complex. And so it's really painful to go through this process and time-consuming. And we have validated this with several thousand homeowners, and we are seeing that there's a huge information gap. Most people don't know how I should do it, what should I do, and where do I even get started? So this is exactly what YellowTin solves for. Our goal is to help our users who are renters and homeowners get personalized insights in terms of, and recommendations in terms of the costs, their savings, their carbon emission reductions, their incentives, and more importantly, build out an integrated solution for them. And the way we go about approaching this is we look at every user's local zip code. We look at the local utility rates, their carbon intensities, their energy profile, future lifestyle changes. We build that whole data set and then map how each of these technologies actually work in that specific zip code. And once we map all of that, that helps us to deliver these accurate savings results. And the platform itself is extremely engaging. People can add and remove and drop products and see what it does in terms of its impact from economic standpoint, carbon emission standpoint. And they can build out a custom plan, and then they can choose to take action if they choose to electrify. In terms of our setup and business model, we are a B2B2C model. What that means is we white label our platform for climate leading organizations who then market it to the residential stakeholders. We've spent the last 2+ years really focusing on different customer segments. We have learned a lot. We started with solar installers, then utilities and cities, but today we're really laser focused on selling to companies. And when it comes to companies, there are really two plays for us. One is, as we are all aware, sustainability is heightened. Stakeholders, shareholders, customers, employees are demanding that companies drive sustainability and lower carbon emissions. And companies are looking to do this not just from their supply chain or product, but all over, decarbonization of their workforce. And this topic is even more heightened with work from home. because all of that emissions actually plays into scope 3 emissions. So the first thing here is we sell to sustainability groups, and they then push it out to their employees. And in several cases, if companies are actually manufacturing, let's say, a solar panel, a heat pump, or delivering energy loans, they want to increase their engagement with their end customers or individuals. So either of these two could be our customers. Our core focus today is to start with the sustainability groups, which we are doing, but then companies which also have employees and have customers grow into them. In terms of our market size, we're based in California, but we support whole of the US. We have also so really scoped out the US market size. And it's really the total number of homes available times our ability to price and make money from every home every year. And that leads to a pretty big market size, about 7 billion. In terms of revenue, till date, all our revenue has been SaaS-based, which means the company pays us a fee to get the white label. Today, we have done a great job of winning some of these customers. What we need to focus on is driving user engagement, which we are at the early stages. And we plan to spend the next 12 to 24 months really nailing that user engagement and a delightful user experience and all of those. And still it will be a SaaS base. But once we nail that, longer term, we want to optimize and monetize on marketplace.
Time is up.
Okay, yeah, just can I take this is the team and
go for it. How much do you raise? And tell us quickly while we add everybody.
Yeah, 2.5 million seed round. To take it to fulfill the next level of milestones.
Very cool. Thanks so much for sharing, Vishwas. Let me bring in the rest of the investors now. Guys, do you have questions for YellowTin and what they're doing?
I can go ahead and kick us off. For the long-term marketplace view, are you anticipating recommending specific vendors? And if so, how do you vet those vendors? And then do you plan to take a cut if a consumer takes action?
Yeah, so we plan to be unbiased and transparent when it comes to the vendors, right? Unless a specific OEM says, I want this for my customers, then we will be showing their products. In terms of cut, we don't take a finder's fee, we would rather take a fee when the person actually signs a contract or makes a purchase. And so this is more longer term, yes.
I would just ask, why would you only take a finder's fee? Why would you not just sell the lead?
We can, in general, the whole clean energy industry, especially solar, people are very skeptical when you say, I'm going to sell a lead, because then they take the risk of I'm paying for a lead, whether it converts or not. If it doesn't convert, it doesn't mean anything. So we are saying that we will educate and engage our users confidently that we are willing to take the risk to wait. And then the bigger advantage is we can charge much more versus a smaller fee upfront.
In terms of your sales process to businesses, what is that looking like? I know you said that this is something that can be a bit of almost an employee perk for employees. It seems like a not super cool employee perk. I see why it's important. But in terms of companies kind of selling that to their employees as part of their employee perks packaging or package, how do you best do that? Or what have you seen?
Yeah, when we started off, we thought this would be more we sell into HR and benefits. What we realized is HR folks have the same motivation selling Disney tickets versus sustainability. So we realized that's not the right champion. So it's really the heads of sustainability, and we focus on climate leading organizations which really have a sustainability function. They are super excited for several reasons, right? They want to, apart from the branding, they want to drive employee retention, but they have to reduce the work from home emissions, which is key. And we are seeing some of our customers actually saying, we'll give you money, employee, if you actually transition to clean energy. So today, most of the sales process has been account-based direct sales. We're hustling our way. The long-term goal is to build out marketing and a brand, so we drive a pipeline of leads that we can then, the sales team can convert.
Understood.
I would imagine that for a company to use this to lower their scope 3 emissions with the remote workforce, they'd have to generate a carbon credit, but the accounting for that gets really tricky because they they may have given their employee like a subsidy, but the employee still put out quite a bit of cash in order to make these upgrades. And they also, not 100% of their home electricity bill will be counted in scope 3. So how are you kind of thinking about how companies can use this to help lower their scope 3 with the remote workforce?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is an evolving space. There are companies who say, yeah, scope 3 is great, but we want to be seen as a climate company. So we really want them to decarbonize. That's one way of looking at this. We can get into the nuances and into the weeds and actually pull out the actual scope 3 details from the platform. So we can say, hey, total emissions is so much. Of course, company, this is not scope 3, but there is this subset where it's so scope 3, which you can make an influence. So we're working through that. And we have the pieces in play, but I think over time, as companies mature out in the space, we will be able to kind of streamline this process.
And in terms of competition, I imagine that you're like, going to compete against all the players that are very niche focused on, EV cars, right? That are like essentially having softwares where you can track all the emissions and optimize for your battery, et cetera, et cetera. Same for the solar panels on your rooftop, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm wondering, why do you believe that the holistic approach where you have to integrate with each provider in the household prevails over, on essentially steering my 5 electrification devices at home individually?
Dan, I'm not sure I understood your question. Are you talking about post-sale where solar is on my home, and now I want to look at the production and integrating that data? Because we don't play into that. I just want to make sure I understand.
So if I understand correctly, you kind of like, agglomerate or synthesize or summarize essentially like, the EV footprint in a household, right? If I have a solar panel, if I have an electric vehicle in the garage, stuff like that, right? Like you want to bring this all together into one platform to have a very concise overview and to steer each of those components.
It's more the bigger use case is, hey, I want to transition to energy. I don't have an electric car. I don't have solar. What is the benefit of this in terms of dollars, carbon? How do I do this? What does it mean for me, my specific use case? Getting them to actually say, now I'm confident to buy an electric panel, car, solar. That's our use case versus someone who's already made the purchases.
Oh, then I misunderstood, because I thought that you want to help people who have, those solutions in place to have an overall overview how they can become even, efficient.
Yeah, no, that's not the use case. It's more about getting the guy who doesn't have anything or has only one, let's say solar, now get heat pumps and things, get him to adopt.
Got it. Okay, well then I'm glad we talked about it. Thank you for clarifying.
Is providing financing a model in the future?
Yeah, so we see that, money is a key barrier for a lot of people in electrification. So being able to tell them the options in terms of, and profiling the user, hey, am I someone who has a lot of money and can just write a check? Or no, I need a loan. Who is the lender? Can you help me bring it all together? I think that is definitely key. There's also a low to moderate income community, which is also very important. There are choices for them. And so financing is definitely key, Matt.
One question about user engagement. I think there are like lots of different perk and platforms, and how do you, get the people coming back to your platform and see and take this problem serious, especially if they have not had any touch points with this electrification journey of the.
No, great question. I mean, partly a lot of the solutions out there, and which is why we are where we are today, is they have not focused on fruitful education and engagement. It's more about give me your name and number. They try to sell it. So it's and people have been misled, right? Our goal is to be like the Mint or the Betterment for personal finance, really being that education advisor. So it's that drives from our results where we're not here to sell you something, and it's coming through a trusted environment, leveraging the relationship between my company and myself versus this is a direct consumer brand. I don't know who YellowTin is, right? So we want to make sure that we are just the technology layer, but we ride on the relationship, which is already established because I trust my employee, or let's say I'm buying from Home Depot as an example. I love Home Depot service. I trust what they're giving me. So that's the focus for us.
And then to date, what industries are you having the most traction with? So I know you said the ones that are more climate forward. So I'd imagine some tech companies in there, but curious if you have better traction with certain industries.
We're talking definitely some of the customers are climate leading, are tech focused, Silicon Valley, but we're also seeing some, Midwest. But we're talking to, and there's a big list of that, but there's companies which you wouldn't even think of, like who like your pharmacy kind of companies who are saying, hey, we are building sustainability. We want to offer this to our employees. So I think they may not be the first one to act on this, but they are trying to build out the strategy. They will look to the climate leading companies and understand, and building those relationships is always good.
Daniel, Moritz, Laura, any other questions for Vishwas? Awesome. Then thanks for presenting. It's a super cool company. Congrats on the traction so far. I want to hand things over to our last company of the night, which rounds things out well on the energy perspective. Now we've got Leon on the program with Sunified. Leon, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in terms of making the sun a bit more transparent, so to speak, when it comes to solar and renewable energy?
No problem. Thank you for your time. I'd like to thank you for getting me into the platform here for the late entry. So again, it's good. Can you see my screen?
We see your screen. It's just a desktop.
Right. That's no good. Let's try again. No.
You are good to go. Your 5 minutes starts now.
So you see my screen now.
Golden.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so Sunified is really a deep tech company, and we are looking for a VC play that can see past the hardware challenge and the unit economics around hardware. So this is the first kind of lay down that, we're not a strict software play only. And really to set the vision of Sunified, you can go to sunified.com, but here it is. We are a fintech play on top of solar, but we deploy a sensor per solar panel, per string, per solar infrastructure. And as you move the grid dominated by renewables and the grid becomes more distributed, energy ecosystems is intermittent, but interconnected. And decision-making needs to happen kind of in a local scene, even when you need energy security. Let's say there might be a weather event and you want a community to island their community battery and have the capability to at least keep a minimum freezer and refrigerator load on. And then we need some data standardization that we can learn from other industries, but the energy market still lacks this kind of data standard and data exchange connecting all stakeholders and users. And this is where Sunified really wants to give a single source of truth. This is the energy that was generated from a solar panel. We tag that energy green and we track it through the ecosystem. And that is done with a little chip we call our Unity chip. And that Unity chip really is 30 years of my experience as a defense engineer. I've built embedded systems and e-money tracking systems for US Treasury. So I know how to do the accounting. And in our accounting, the energy is the money. So we track every 30 seconds a witness proof coming off each solar panel. And we aggregate this every 5 minutes to a public oracle. So you can publish what is the generational data from my solar park, my solar panel, my rooftop on a commercial industrial location. This allows us to aggregate, starting with solar, a chip and platform that really aggregates oracle data into infrastructure and creates an API economy. So this becomes an ecosystem play where we offer panels as a service, ESG as a service, and eventually orchestration of energy as a service. So we packetize energy every 30 seconds to enable new APIs to be created to orchestrate energy as a software flow. I'm a pretty mature person. I was here before the internet. We packetize copper wire as voice over IP. IP packets now are streaming my voice and my video to everyone that is on this broadcast. We see energy being software-defined energy networking. And there needs to be a fundamental way of doing that. And our proposition is that Sunified's Unity chip will do that. We also take energy generation, but also some aggregate information around temperature. We timestamp when that energy was available. We also provide some weather and other location information. So we know how to provide a green signal, and we can say that this green energy will be available to a community for the next 2 hours. And therefore, please consume it, right? There's kind of an energy decay, green energy time function, and a distance decay function with our energy packets. So we give a green signal and we make a call to action for people to consume that green energy. And if you take the next kind of step, how can we scale this? And so the company is a fintech company that's building this deep tech, but we also had to get our hands dirty and build at scale. So in Australia, it's a slam dunk to build a solar park. We are building 51 solar parks with a business unit of our company to drive the unit economics and to eat our own dog food. So our sensors will go on our own parks and showcase how to build the best 5 megawatt parks in the world in a nice sunny location with battery storage in Australia. And we basically have been building this model for the last 2 years. And we're building out the first 6 parks and then 45 to follow. And this is a subordinate business to the Sonify group. I'm really the tech founder, and I'm driving the unit economics and the ecosystem around the tech. And so if you understand scale and unit economics, we have to drive the initiative for the semiconductor companies to fathom that this is possible, that an IoT chip will be less than $5 per solar panel, and then less than $2 per solar panel, and provide this data utility that creates a lot of advantage in the marketplace.
And your time is up.
Thank you.
How much are you guys raising?
We're raising 5 mil US plus 5 mil to follow. The Deep Tech Equity Fund in Netherlands has said that they will follow. We're looking for a lead for the 5 mil US.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing. As I pull all of the investors in, one of my first questions is 51 solar parks is a lot more than an MVP. Why do you have to go that big when it comes to building out the secondary business line?
We're driving the unit economics around half a million sensors. So that's 500,000 sensors. So that's about 255 megawatts to drive that order book. We don't need to own it. We will easily let someone else own the parks, but we want to drive and showcase the utility of our sensors, at least on the first 6 parks. We don't want to flip them, but we want to have that operational influence to show the utility of our sensors on those parks.
Understood. So it's the plan isn't to own 51 parks yourself then. That's good.
There's some people that want to own them, other people that don't, right? So we have this tension in our company, right? Because the only way to drive this is a bit Elon Musk, right? You need to drive the unit economics in order to make this business case happen. So it's a little bit of a tougher business case to chew on, but I'm driving the technology stack. That's really my job.
It is true, but he didn't park 52,000 Teslas in his parking lot.
No,
he sold them to other people, and that's I think going to be part of the unlock that you guys need to find.
So that's what we unlock. But by having our sensor on each solar panel, we turn on a utility for fractional ownership. So this allows the crowd to own the solar park, and then we can gradually flip it either as a green bond or as crowdfunding. That's really the Trojan horse that we're dragging through with our Unity sensor.
You should look at Raise Green. They've got a strong marketplace platform for solar. Yep. This could be a good partnership for them.
There's a whole bunch of people in the ecosystem, including the 2 other players that we hear in solar and renewables that need our chip, right? Our chip can go into batteries, help you drive the unit economics for battery sharing. It can go into homes and commercial industrial locations to show you how you can offset your emissions. This is a core bit of information that the industry needs, and software just doesn't do it. You can't retrofit an inverter data and get this level of detail that you need.
Understood. And I want to hand things over to the panelists because I've been asking a lot of questions.
Maritza, Laura, or Daniel, fire away.
Asking about scalability. So what do you want to do with those 5 plus 5 million?
Sure. So we're building a deep tech team in Toronto. We have the deep tech team around machine learning and the actual chip design. In Europe is our focus to launch because of the European market has got a perverted incentive to really accelerate solar. We still see the US market being very fragmented and a lot of channel power and a bias for the PUCs to drive how solar is deployed in their regions. And if we look at what we're doing in different regions, you know, the US has a totally different path to market that's more around solar plus EV. That's how it's evolved. And in Europe, we've now found traction around the Port of Rotterdam. We have grants now from the government of South Holland, and we're driving that use case for decarbonization of some heavy industries, where they need to bring in green electrons from solar, and they're driving eventually their green hydrogen project. So they want guarantees of origin of green electrons, and this is a way that we can give them that immutable proof.
And I would say, I mean, that is you digitize the certification of the green.
Exactly. Yep. So we digitize the carbon credits, and this allows us to almost unbundle the carbon credits and create a global digital asset. So we can be the Airbnb of solar. We can dematerialize carbon credits on every solar panel that has our chip on it, and allow individual ownership of those carbon credits in the property rights of those solar panels globally. So someone in Amsterdam can hold a bit of solar as a property right in Australia for the solar park and the derived outcomes from that solar park, the energy, the carbon credits, and the data.
Understood. So who's your customer today? Who would buy that?
Yeah. So the customer are the solar park owner operators, the project developers, and the other customer is the insurance providers. We provide a signal on every solar panel on the bankability and the yield of that solar panel. The insurance providers make sure that the bankers don't lose any money. They don't take any risk. So the people that want to charge liquidated damages to the EPC is the insurance provider. The insurance provider will say, is that a proper claim? Is that a warranty problem on a solar panel? Is that a O&M problem that someone didn't do the proper maintenance on a solar panel? Or is this an EPC problem that something wasn't built right and a panel fell off the single axis tracker? This is one of the world's largest solar parks behind me. This is the Maktoum Solar Park, 75 square kilometers of solar panels. It's like the Matrix. From horizon to horizon to horizon, all you see is solar panels. They cannot maintain this park. They need machine learning and AI to drive the teams to service this park, right? This is the problem. They created basically a problem child, right? How can I do this? Now, you could do it on a schedule, but sand doesn't drift just to one part of a park, right? They know they're starting to do robotic cleaning, but they want to know where to service that park, where to put that crew to do the maintenance. And that's what we do as well, is that predictive maintenance and then the predictive dispatch. So if you run down the asymptote, we create this huge data set, this massive sensor network on every solar park. And then it's all about the data. How can we forecast the dispatch from that solar park so the solar park owner operator can play more merchant at the market? They don't need to take a low price PPA for 15 years. They can say, I'm confident my park will dispatch for the next 5 minutes, the next 2 hours, the next day, this much energy. Therefore, I can place my bid into the market that's more spot market and get a better yield.
I'm assuming that the chips you mentioned, the Unity chips, those are developed in-house, and you mentioned team in Toronto is working on it. Have you, is that a chip? Oh my gosh.
That is a chip, yep. There's a SIM chip and a Bluetooth chip in there, and that's really been my discipline. I've worked with those chips for about 3 decades.
Awesome. Have you experienced any issues with the materials for those chips? Any supply chain issues that you've been experiencing?
We got direct support with ST Micro and NXP. This is why the Dutch government is interested as well. They understand the deep tech kind of equation. Ultimately, we would build our own chip that would make our own silicon, and we would have a number of fabrication houses that would do that. But right now we can take common off-the-shelf chips and put our own IP into those chips as software. And these chipsets in this combination of putting trust in a sensor with a SIM chip is called a distributed root of trust. And this was patented in 2008 with an inventor friend of mine. And we have access to roll up all of his patents, 36 patents in 34 countries, to create this digital fintech fabric on solar parks anywhere in the world. Daniel, you're quiet. Fire away.
I'm still wondering a little bit about the USP, because we see a lot of predictive maintenance companies in the solar industry that go without hardware. They do AI data analytics and
Sure, they're doing infrared analysis, right? They fly a drone over a solar.
No, not even. They do AI and analytics on the energy provided and can pinpoint which PV cell is not working correctly.
So I would argue that there is no one doing that at the PV panel level. They're doing it per string. Normally in the larger parks, they only do this per string or combiner box. So it's very rare to find someone doing it per panel with that level of resolution. Eventually, we will actually put the single chip into the substrate of the solar panel and have it laminated as part of the panel itself. Right now, our chip goes into the junction box. We also have a percentage of accuracy of 1%. So that sort of tolerance and level of tracking is something that no one else in the industry is doing. Right now, you can use Solar Edge or Enphase and track your optimizers or microinverters, but they're not at that 1% accuracy.
But is that diminishing returns at that point, is the question?
Well, we don't think so, because the distributed root of trust really gives an advantage on who has fractional ownership of that asset, and we can peel off those contractual rights, just like you can for a music library. Someone has the rights to the lyrics, someone has the movie rights, someone has the video rights. So someone here can have the green offtake rights, someone gets the energy, someone else gets access to the data. With the data, you can make solar futures and contracts for difference. So we're creating a bundle of rights on every solar panel, and we bring new revenue lines that the industry has never seen before.
Understood. And how do you compare with competitors like Sun Exchange and other places that are enabling similar levels of democratization in solar, but not necessarily at the same data specific?
So Sun Exchange would be a great customer of ours, right? Sun Exchange right now, they digitize the smart meter feeds. They don't have that resolution that we give. So we would give Sun Exchange a different way to package their mechanism. They're quite small. Sun Exchange is not playing in the larger side. They're playing, in developing countries for solar projects that have that social good. What we're trying to do is to get the unit economics around a utility scale solar park, but then make that a social good that the communities can buy into. So in Australia, we have Bendigo Bank Foundation helping us bring that community benefit to the actual adjoining community. So the community participation, we think, is really important, that solar becomes a social good. Eventually, we'll step away from the solar park ownership. We want to be a tech company and AI company and license that along with the patents.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Yeah. That's everything from my side then, as we start to need to kind of wrap things up. Moritz, Laura, do you have any other questions?
Thank you very much. Happy to jump definitely on a call to understand it a little bit
better.
Great,
Moritz. Yeah, I love to dive deeper, and I like what Buoyant Ventures is doing. So I did actually go through your form on your website, Laura. So I'm going to push for a call with you as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Awesome.
Quite a salesman as well. Great work. Great work. Well, now
I'm here for a reason, right? Hustle, Matt.
You are here for a reason, and you're a founder for a reason.
Yep.
So I want to transition things over now, folks, to the last segment of our edition of the Startup Tank, and that is the startup of the night. We lost Daniel and didn't get to get his vote, so it looks like his votes aren't going to count. Now there's three of us. What we do here, we name the one or two companies that we find is the most promising, the most interesting. This is the one with the biggest upside, the one that has us the most excited, the one we most want to meet with, and why. Moritz or Laura, do you want to go first and say which one or two companies had you the most kind of excited?
Ladies first.
Okay, I'll give two. And one, unfortunately, is outside of Buoyant's investment thesis, but I still wanted to give a call out to Goodmylk. I think that it's a really cool product that you're making that's going to completely disrupt the industry. Haven't seen anything else like it. And I like your approach with the omnichannel. But a little bit outside of our investment thesis, but I really love what you're doing. And then I'll also give a call out to YellowTin. We've actually seen quite a few startups in this space trying to go the B2B2C channel as an employee benefit. But what I like about this approach, and the space is very new, everyone's still trying to figure out scope 3 and how you actually count it and what employers can actually take credit for. But I like the idea of having a holistic approach of electrifying the entire household. And I like not being tied to specific vendors, and the financing piece to help residential owners actually implement these projects is something that I haven't seen yet. So I really like that approach too.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing, Moritz.
Yes, thank you. I think so many great pitches and ideas and companies, especially, but a lot of still in an early phase. So I go with Sheru. I think it's impressive traction that you have built in the last couple of months, and really interested in seeing how you can drive that forward. Still thinking that sticking to your market would be something I would recommend. But lifting these economies to a next level of electrification is something I would definitely would love to support. Although, as I already sent you privately, that fund-wise we don't have a mandate for this geography. But wishing you all the luck. Number 2, and now it gets a little bit difficult because most of you are still so early stage that we are not that confident with these kind of companies anymore, and everything is so impressive. But I have to look who's still in the call. I would go with let me see.
We've got Sonified, Goodmylk, Local Ocean, Carbonade, Sheru, and
I think all
YellowTin.
of you have like such a great impact idea and vision, even though some go in different directions. I think I have spoken to Local Ocean just privately a little bit because I think there is a need in getting local food production going, and even though of course alternative products out of the lab will probably hopefully make the race over time, but it's something where I wouldn't see a great VC case honestly, but I think the idea is really important. And being a barista and believing in the global coffee consumption market, I think with Goodmylk you can't really go wrong if you go if you want to scale something, because the existing demand is just given. And if you bring a better product, easy to use, easy to handle to the market, I think there's a great opportunity.
Agreed.
Yeah. Sorry that I only could choose 2.
No, totally agreed. And as a pro tip or an ask for Brooke, I've always envisioned peanut butter milk as the coolest thing ever. If you can pull off a way to make peanut butter milk, we can retroactively make you startup of the night. But I would have to go with Sheru. I love what those guys are doing in terms of bringing EV batteries online to essentially power the energy storage of India. And I think you guys have improved incredible traction. You guys would be my choice as startup of the night. All of the companies that presented, I think, are incredible. Everything of what you guys are doing, you've gotten pretty far. You've got great tech, you've got great teams, and that definitely all within kind of the scope of Forward VC. We're a little earlier. We do pre-seed and seed because we don't have big boy girl pants when it comes to writing big checks. So we've got to work with the founders as early as possible and help them with getting those follow-on later investors and growth. But I would say from my side, Sheru would be my choice. Then it sounds like we have 2 for Sheru. Are you on board with that as well, Laura? If we said Sheru, or is there somebody else that you think is maybe the number 2 across everybody's perspective?
I'm on board with Sheru. Also very impressed.
Okay, then Sheru it is. Congrats, Ankit. Thanks for coming on and sharing what you're doing. I'll add you in here in case you want to have a little. I added the wrong person, all of these little clicks and buttons. Thank everyone for tuning in. This has been another edition of the Startup Tank, the Climate Investor Pitch Show. If you want to subscribe, hit that subscribe bell on YouTube if you're on YouTube. If not, thestartuptank.com/YouTube. It'll get you there and to subscribe. We're also on all of your major podcast platforms of choice. Just search the Startup Tank or my name, Matt Ward. I want to give each of our guests a chance to not introduce themselves, but outroduce themselves. So where's the best place for people to find you and learn more about your funds? Moritz, you want to go first this time?
Sure. So best find us under FEV.VC, Future Energy Ventures, based in Berlin, but we also have a team in the US and in Israel. Always happy to connect to all impact and energy founders out there. You can reach and find us also on LinkedIn, and yeah, happy to receive your private messages.
And Laura, Buoyant Ventures, what do you do? Where can people find you?
Probably the easiest place is going to be our intake form on our website. So you can go to buoyant.vc and we try to respond to those as quickly as we can. We're a small team and we're growing. But otherwise, you can just reach out on LinkedIn or via email. It's Laura@buoyant.vc.
You're mute, Matt.
Myself, I should probably do a better job with that. Guys, I'm Matt Ward. I run Forward VC, the number 4 Ward.vc. We're an early stage syndicate that invests in the world's best climate companies. We look at North America, Europe, and Israel. Well, although I will say with regards to Moritz and Sheru, in venture, the most important rule is there are no rules. And if you got to break the rules, sometimes you screw the mandates and you go for the companies, you go for the winners. But we're focused on early stage. If you want to apply for a future session of the Startup Tank, visit thestartuptank.com to apply, or apply through our site at forward.vc. And again, this whole program is brought to you by Leva, the best way to set up an SPV. If you're raising money, if you're running a fund, or if you're a syndicator that's syndicating awesome companies like we do with Forward VC, then check out Leva. Forwardvc.com/Leva to set up your 5-minute SPV. You get rid of the lawyers, you get rid of most of the paperwork. Things are fast, simple, easy, cheap. It's a great way to do it if you're trying to raise and pool capital. Forward.vc/Leva for more details. And until next time, this has been another awesome edition of the Startup Tank Climate Investor Pitch Show. Thanks, Moritz. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Daniel, for coming on and being panelists. And thanks to all of our incredible founders for putting their heart on the line, sharing their story, and trying to build a better world, because it is rough. Thanks, everybody. And have a great night.